In the last episode, we set up a food network to deliver crops and livestock from the farms that I've created in the valley around Limu, and they are distributing to the container station, which I've set up. And the intention is container trains will leave this station and go to City 2 as yet unnamed, where there will be a food factory, and the food will then come back to Limu and then be distributed to Limu and the surrounding villages in this valley. But what we need to do first is work on the connecting stations and lines between Limu up this valley. We already have the TGV line set up to where City 2 will be. So the first thing we're going to do is start creating the individual towns on two separate lines either side of the river as indicated in the diagram. We already have a station set up for town 7 that has two passenger lines that will diverge either side of the river, but we have the small matter of the goods line that is going to take goods trains along the slow lines, which we'll need to incorporate into the stations. And I've also, as noted in the last episode, created a crossover from the container station to allow us, if possible, to run high-speed cargo trains directly to Centre 2 along the TGV line if we can fit these into the schedule. But we will first go and start creating the stations for the individual towns along the route. One of the first issues to solve is that our goods lines are on the wrong side of town 7. We need them to be alongside the tracks here. So the first thing we need to do is create a crossover that rises up, goes over these tracks, and then joins it onto the right hand side. So using the shift key, because you want to pull the tracks away from following the parallel tracks, and then use the custom height to get it as tall as you possibly can, just to start off the climb. And don't underestimate how long it takes to actually gain height with tracks, because obviously the slopes and angles are not very steep, and then basically you need to just keep testing whether or not you can cross over the tracks. The bridge pillar collision is not because of the height, it's because of actually the type of bridge. So you might need to go through what bridges you have available and see what you can use that doesn't collide with the tracks. And if you're doing it at a tight angle like this, you're always going to have problems with pillars, because pillars want to be sort of short spaced, and the more shallow the angle that you cross over the tracks, the more issues you're going to have actually getting these to not hit the tracks below it. This looks like it could work. The addition of the second track sometimes causes issues, and you can see now this isn't going to work. But what we'll do is we'll come back to that, and we will amend the center line of the bridge, making sure that we can go steeply down as far as we can. At this point, we'll use the embankment. It doesn't have to be bridged all the way. We'll just make sure that we are level on the ground, not creating depressions where we don't need them. Okay, and my point about this bridge is you can just delete these track segments. And change the bridge type purely for that drag segment. We've got a much longer span there without a pillar. It all depends what bridges you have and which bridge mods you have. That's a successful crossover, and these tracks will then join up. So these cargo trains won't interfere with the passenger trains. I just need to make sure that you get rid of any weird curves that you don't want. So we kind of have a weird S-curve going on here. Just see the angle, probably not quite right for that. And we need to pull this back in by basically going a bit more direct. That looks a little better. Again, just remembering. See, it's still not right. The angle is still too weird. That's better. It just looks unrealistic when you've got these weird S-bends. That's much more like it. Change that to embankment. Perfect. So town 9, we're going to create roughly in this area. So we need to take these sets of tracks and these sets of tracks, join them together. These sets of tracks will go over the river and will form town 8, to be named obviously in the future. So we'll have catenary on the passenger tracks. So they have a standard limit of 120 for this track type. Quite sure what trains will run yet. Probably something similar to the just the standard TER trains, so not high speed. The standard regional trains running in France. We're going to keep this nice and tight to the river. And we will join up what will effectively be the slow lines. Actually, I'm going to come at about this point. It's easier to join it this way than what I was just trying to do. Not really concerned about the speeds of these. Just need to raise it up slightly because it's dipping into the ground quite low there because of the angle that it's coming down from the crossover. So these are going to have things like the coal and the steel trains and the iron ore trains that run into the steelworks. That's good. Make sure we got catenary back on. And we're going to dip under the bridge. Something about this kind of angle. We're going to create a town around about here. So I'm going to use the, what do we say? Let me just check the platform length that we're using. 160, okay. If that's not long enough, we'll have to come back and change the length later on. So we're going to create it around this position. Simple 2 tracks. Just make sure you are connecting the left and right to the right, left and right bits of the station. Be careful when you're dragging tracks out on long curves because they can split quite easily. And you'll see there, I'm going to need to amend my curves because I'm coming in a slightly odd angle to where I've positioned the station. So just make sure, check your S curves, check you don't have anything weird. It's quite smooth. We'll go back and we will take the goods line tracks as well. So these are not electrified. I'm not using the parallel track tool. It's can be useful in certain places, that mod, but in the early videos I found myself having to correct it more often than it was actually helping me. And This way I can just see straight away if I have any gaps or issues or things have detached where they shouldn't be. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to run the goods tracks not as part of the station tracks. Just going to run them very close behind. What you can do, if you want it really tight up to the station, is you can just add station tracks, which we may well do in some of the other stations. I'll demonstrate that as well. I think that's probably sufficient distance to get the angles to work without any speed loss. Perfect. And then we'll connect these up. So that is town 9, and we'll work through on a similar basis for the other towns along the valley, and I'll come back to you. So we've provided some basic approximate layouts for the towns on this side of the river. Some very interesting landscape that these towns will sit in, and the tracks along the river valley going to create some interesting views and setups once we get the trees and the villages and the roads and everything else in. It's going to be a really, really stunning train journey if you were going along this route. Doing various things with the slow lines as they peel off from the stations. City 2, we'll work out once we've done the other side of the river where all these tracks converge and where we are going to position the container station for City 2 and how this is going to connect to the TGV line as well. So quite a complicated set of junctions in this town. So we've completed the track on the other side of the river, bridge over where we will have town 8, town 10, town 11, town 12 with a bridge back over the river, and this is where we will start to work out how we connect into City 2. Lots of good flat areas on this side of the river that we will use for further heavy industry later in this series, and obviously areas where we'll have more farms and more opportunities. But generally along these narrow parts of the river, we're just going to have towns, some roads, and then basically tree it up and make it look good, because there's not really much more room for anything beyond what we're showing, and it is starting to get a little congested with tracks. It's probably getting towards the unrealistic side of track and railway congestion in a river valley of this size, but at the end of the day, trying to run as many trains as we can and make it as interesting as we can. So in City 2, we already have set up and running the three TGV lines that we've already set up when you look at the diagram, and these are coming into the station we've got with these 4 tracks. And you can see one of the TGV lines here running on TGV line B, and we're going to need at least another 4 tracks for the regional trains which are heading from this direction on the diagram, and we will then need to place a container station, which I'm going to estimate sort of somewhere over this area. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm actually going to try and create a bit of a more interesting station for City 2. So I'm going to actually delete the station, and this is going to cause a lot of issues because now my lines don't have a station to connect to, but that's fine if you build a station in exactly the same area. So I'm going to use the Liège railway station, and we said that we needed 8 tracks. I'm going to make them 320 and high speed to account for the TGV trains. And it's a little too long for the tracks that we set up. We just need to trim these down, and I'll trim them down to about here so that I can position. And if you unpause it once you leave the station, you should get an indication of where the station was with a timer. You need to make sure you've got your icons turned on. Yes, so you see this timer will count down. Once that's counted down, you won't have the opportunity to replace the station. If you were to position the station in roughly the same approximate area, it will adopt the old station name. So let's see if this works. Yes, so it's adopted City C2. So any lines that we reconnect back up to it, we won't have to reprogram all of the timetables. So that is very useful. So we're just going to reconnect our tracks, and hopefully we won't have any issues with timetables no longer working. Just got to watch out for these weird S pens again. Try and get the curves as smooth as possible. Just going to cut these back to enable us to get a smooth transition in these tracks. Let's see how this looks. This might be a bit odd. Yeah, I'm going to allow that. Station throats can look a little strange, but this is fine. Make sure we've got our crossover tracks back in. Okay, so we still have issues because basically we can't connect to the same platforms that we were. So whilst it's recognizing that City C2 still is on the line with the new station, we do need to make sure that we select the correct platform numbers, because the platform numbers, the terminal numbers, have all changed. So in this instance, we can say these alternatives, so that clears the problem on that line. That's fine, because this line will come in, cross over to these platforms, and then go up. So for these, we could be platform 7 or 8. No, that's still the problem. It needs to be 6 or 5. It does take a little bit of fiddling around sometimes to make sure you don't have terminals selected that the line can't possibly connect to. So we've managed to sort out all the terminal issues, so all the TGV trains will be running as they were previously with the new platform designations, and we have plenty of tracks to be able to connect up our regional trains, which are connecting from over here. So this is going to be quite a complicated little set of, I'll keep it the high speed tracks to keep the same color. how to get the tracks exactly over this railway line. They're going to converge around here. So I'll build a bridge around this point. Going to have quadruple tracks by this point because the trains would have converged. But obviously making sure we don't interfere with the TGV lines with the regional trains. I think we've obviously missed an opportunity here to get this train to connect into some additional platforms on this station. So I think we're definitely going to do that. And tweak the diagram. So we'll add in 2 more tracks. And some additional platforms. Standard passenger platforms. Since we've got the 4 terminals, so we can pick up the 4 tracks. It's just going to be a bit of a weird angle to pick up this bridge. Let's see what Transport Fever offers us. We'll smooth the terrain out. I think that's okay. What we're trying to do is just create things which are sort of visually interesting. Don't want just the same boring station and tracks every time. But trying to do that with a sort of modicum of realism. It's kind of what I'm trying to get to. I don't mind that that's a different color actually. It's almost as if this side has been replaced relatively recently. And this side is maybe older tracks. It's okay, fine with that. Right, we're going to have another depot. I'm sure of it. I'm not going to build the depots for these regional trains yet until I can work out how long it actually takes the regional trains to get between the stations. Because if I assume that it's just going to be a depot at either end, we're just going to end up with like 1 service a day again. I think we're going to end up with some intermediate depots. Actually, we just don't know how many yet until we work out that timetable. This is quite a steep drop. But we're inevitably going to have depots around this area, I think. It's interesting on these curves that the track is not snapping, so you have to be quite careful. Usually approach it from the other direction. Gets it so it snaps to a parallel track. Try and get back into the station, throw it as tight as possible. Don't just go directly. When you look at train stations in reality, as we said before, try and get tracks to run at least part of the way alongside each other, not just diversifying out into a web. It's that kind of, it's not unrealistic for a major city to have a track layout that looks like that. If it was coming straight over, maybe it starts to look a little bit like space constraints and things like that are not actually an issue, where in reality, when you've got a city, when you've got rights of way, and you've got to buy people out of their businesses and homes to be able to build these things, you try to keep it all in one set of routes as far as possible. You don't want to compound the problem by creating multiples. Where you have diverging routes going to different places, of course you have to have multiple routes, but trying to keep it as tight as possible is what I'm trying to get at. That's the passenger connections for now. We will have a look at building the container station, I would say roughly this area. We're going to start off with just a basic single track cargo station. And we're going to edit it and basically remove everything, because we're going to use let's not remove everything just in case we cause a bug or something. So let's just create those two. I'm going to have platforms like this. So we're using these ground cargo station mods so that we don't actually have platforms. It will just adopt the textures from the ground outside. Let me just check that was the right length. Yeah, it's certainly long enough. So this is going to be a major hub for cargo in City 2. So I'm going to say let's build 6 platforms. 6 terminals rather. 3 platforms. I'll come back to you when I finish this. So we have a basic cargo station setup. We're going to detail this with containers and all the other bits and pieces that we did for City 1, but we're not going to do that until we know exactly where our tracks are going to come in. So we basically need to connect this goods line needs to run alongside and connect to it. So that's the first thing that we will set up. And this is getting a little bit complicated in this area because we need these tracks to cross over the TGV and then cross over these lines. So it's starting to get a little bit complicated, I suggest, but let's see how it looks. Can I go over or under? So I'm going to try and go over. And that's not high enough. Might not actually be able to get high enough. I think we're going to have to go under. Yeah, because I don't think we're ever going to reach back down again. So we've got something that we can use. No, maybe we don't. No. Forget I said anything. I thought I had a compact tunnel entry. So we're going to have to do this manually. Basically, I'm going to set up my tracks. And then go down. Into a tunnel. And see where we can connect back up. Seems reasonable. In a way, it's good to tunnel because the complexity starts to look a little unrealistic. It's just hidden in the ground anyway. So actually you take your eyes off the weirdness of that junction. We said that we were going to go parallel, so we need to make quite a turn at this point. I think we need to come in somewhere around here. Do actually need to leave some space for the city to exist. This is for my coal and steel trains, etc., to not have to go through the container station. So a container station will connect up to this area, but I also need to make sure, because what I'm trying to do is see if I can do a high-speed cargo train that runs between City 2 and City 1 in the gaps in the TGV schedule. So I do actually need to connect up these TGV lines to my container station. And I'm wondering actually if the best place to do this is to connect to the cargo lines around this point. Otherwise, we have more complicated junctions and things running here, which just start to look a little bit like it's a bit too much. I think this is a perfect opportunity, roughly in this location, to connect over to the goods lines. Try and get as fast a junction as possible. I'm actually going to make sure that those tracks are the same color. That looks better. This is where if we can get them to run, the fast cargo trains peel off from the main TGV lines and connect over to the standard cargo tracks. So we'll do it at roughly about here, and we'll change track. Imagine that was a new junction. Sure, I think that works. And I'm going to peel off the container station at around this point. Again, just trying to make it look as realistic as possible. And this is as much as I'm going to do for the time being, just to check if I can actually get the timetable working on the TGV line. Then I will detail and fix the city and the depots. Then we'll do the timetabling for the regional trains, and then we can understand how many depots we need for the regional trains. Then we can establish exactly what City 2 looks like. So to be able to work out the timings, if we can fit a goods train within the timetable of the TGVs, we basically need the TGVs to be in their depots. And luckily, we're coming up to around that time of the day where the TGVs should be stabling for the evening. And what we'll do is we'll pause them, basically hold them there until we've run our testing for our cargo train. So we'll just make sure that all the TGVs get back into their depot, and then once that happens, we will pause them. So all the TGVs which would be in the way of the timing are currently in their depots, so we just need to make sure that we put a stop order, because we don't want the TGVs interfering with the timing of the trains as they come out. We need to make sure we do this in City 3 as well. so that we have any trains running on that line just held out of the way temporarily. So we need to create a line, a test line for our cargo train. So we're going to set it to run from Nemo and go all the way to currently incorrectly named station Uteritz Sidings, which we'll rename once we've developed the name of City 2. So let's just check that the route is right. That's good. So it's picking up the high-speed line as the fastest possible route anyway. So we didn't need to tell it to go via certain signals or anything like that. So that's pretty smooth. And it is using the loop to return. So let's just call this appropriate name so we know what to assign our train to. I have a small train depot set up, and we're going to use electric locomotive. We've got some options downloaded. So really we want to try and get the fastest electric independent train for this purpose. These are all 160. They're all 160, apart from this older train from 1970. These look good, 200s. These are 160s. Okay, so let's go with these. And fret are actually I'm not sure if they still exist in France, but they were the container trains, I believe. And sort of definitely running cargo rather. And then we just need to make sure that the wagons actually are going to run that fast as well. So the purpose of these cargo trains is that they're going to take all goods. So basically we need container wagons to take basically anything that we need to carry on here. We're definitely going to be carrying food back, definitely carrying livestock, but these do not take grain. So that's interesting. That these ones do take food, grain and livestock. So that's good, so we'll use these. And these take goods as well. Interesting, so we might have to have slightly different trains depending on exactly what we're intending to carry, as you'd expect. Now, the speed. What speed limit do these have? Because that's going to change. So these will only go 120. These go 160. I think we're going to have to go for the 160. Yeah. We have no other options. So these come in 5-car sections. So we're looking at nothing more than sort of 300 meters. So we could say 316 is too much. That's too much. Let's call it 285. Okay, top speed 160, that's what we've got. Purchase that, and we will run it on the fast test line. And already we have an issue. Saying it can't connect to all stations. That's fine, it's just the platform numbers again. No. So we need to just double check what's going on here. Okay, the problem was that I had picked an electric train, but this section of track I hadn't electrified. And so the error only occurred once it knew that I'd picked an electric train, because it still would have been possible with a diesel. So we have the route set up, and as soon as the train departs from C1 cargo station, then we will see how long it takes and then see if we can work that into the timetable. So let's say 30 seconds. 30 seconds, 0 minutes. This is its departure time. And we'll pick it up at the other end to see how long it takes to run that route. So let's call that 14 minutes 30. So this is approximately the diagram that we've got at the moment. We've just created these two lines, F and G, that will go to City 2, and we have demonstrated line K will be the sort of local goods train, and line J is the line that we want to share with the TGVs. So the TGV timetable, which we've already set up, just to reiterate what this timetable means. Train 1 leaves the TGV depot at this position, then goes to City 1, Limu, about a minute later, and then it arrives at City 2 8 minutes. It departs at 5 minutes, so it's about a 3-minute journey to go from City 1 to City 2. Similarly, we have a second TGV, T3, will leave the depot a little bit later, goes to City 1, and then travels to City 2. It takes the same amount of time, it just leaves slightly later in the schedule. So what we have is a 14-minute cargo train that we want to go along this line. So basically, because we have nothing leaving Centre 2, City 2 rather, to go to City 1 at that time in the morning, we've got a perfect opportunity for the cargo train to leave sort of 4:10 in the morning, and it can go to City 1 and the container station at City 1 without interfering with any other trains, and it can stay there until a point in time where the TGV number 2 leaves. If we leave around the same amount of time, then we will get to City 2 just before, about a minute before TGV number 4 leaves. TGV number 4 leaves whilst we're about halfway, and then gets there just after us. So just to go back to that point, we leave the container station at the same time as TGV T2 leaves City 1. TGV T4 leaves City 1 just over halfway through the container train's journey, and the container train arrives at City 2 1 minute before the TGV T4 arrives. So hopefully we can make this work with the timings. Similarly, we will have a container train go in the opposite direction, leaving City 1 around the same time as TGV T1, and arriving a minute before the later train TGV T3 arrives, staying in the depot in City 2 until there is space in the schedule where we can come back ahead of the return of TGV 1. So the train schedule for container line J looks something like this. So we have 2 trains, and they're basically doing the there and back over the course of our scheduled day. So we have the timetables set up as the diagram, and hopefully once we get everything running, these trains won't interfere at all with the TGVs. So the next episode, we're going to go and develop City 2, and we should have these cargo trains running, and we'll also develop the regional trains as well that run between these 2 cities. So see you next time.